Welcome to Edtech Monday. Uganda's growing education system is matched at its hip with a new practical and skill-centered curriculum. The new curriculum that's praised to deliver a more rounded and active citizenry in the economy, however, faces a core challenge of a starved and stretched teacher workforce. Our latest estimates place the teacher-to-student ratio at 1 to 54, which is well higher than the globally recommended margin of 1 to 45. In this edition of Edtech Monday that focuses on the World Teachers' Day, we ask, how can Edtech be relied upon to curb the shortage and deliver better learning outcomes? And to do that, I have a great cast of guests with me today, and I'll start with you, Flavia, to introduce yourself.
Yes, please. Hello, viewers. My name is Flavia Nakajugo Chizito, and I am the head of training at Teach for Uganda.
What does Teach for Uganda do?
So Teach for Uganda is an organization that basically nurtures leaders and teachers to advance access to equitable quality education in low-income communities.
Hello viewers, my name is Gloria Mbabazi, and I'm the project lead for the Angaza Resource Center, a project under the 40 Days Over 40 Smiles Foundation, and 40 Days Over 40 Smiles Foundation, 40/40 for short, because that's a mouthful, is volunteer-based charitable organization that basically works to promote literacy in Uganda in underserved communities for vulnerable children. Thank you.
All right. I think we need, of course, to start the show by giving you a cake. You're the teacher on the panel.
Yes.
So happy World Teachers' Day.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
The thing is, one of the things that's become more prominent is the teacher-to-student ratio, which has affected learning outcomes. And as we noted earlier, that ratio for Uganda is still way high. What explains something like that? Is it that there are many students, less teachers, or is it that the teaching profession is something that people are not taking up on anymore?
I guess both. For starters, we have more children than the teachers. When you talk about 1 to 54, as you mentioned, in the schools that we operate, we've had to even see this ratio much higher, where we have one teacher to about 180 learners, which is insane, especially if we are looking at the lower levels of education. And so we've seen that there are more children coming to school than the teachers. So you find a school that has maybe 700 children that's having 7 teachers, and you're thinking, at most, you're definitely going to have one teacher serving 100 children. But also, we have seen that ever since COVID, we had more teachers leave the profession because it was not as profitable as they wanted it to be. And so it's both. We have those that have left, so we have fewer teachers, but yet the number of school-going children is not going down, it's just increasing. So the children are many, and the teachers are few, and so we continue to struggle with this challenge. And so one of the things that we're doing at Teach for Uganda, I talked about Teach for Uganda just briefly. We are working with 2 categories of people. We have teachers who are already serving in government schools in underserved communities. But we also have what we call a fellowship, where we interest young graduates in education, train them, and take them to these schools to be able to fill up the gap that is in existence. So in a school where, or in a class where you have, one teacher to 180 learners, we at least provide support with our fellows to try and help bridge that gap. So we can have more people coming in to help bridge that gap. I think it would really be helpful, because it's really crazy. You can't teach with those numbers.
Yes, and Gloria, one of the things that 40/40 does is help bridge that gap by allowing volunteers to come into that. How do you exactly do that?
Okay, so earlier I mentioned that 40/40 is a volunteer-based charitable organization. So we usually put out calls every year for volunteers to come and join our organization. We have different departments, but the key one here is the Angaza school program. Angaza is a Swahili word that means to shine, and we want children to be able to shine in their education, and specifically in their reading and their writing. That's literacy. So 6 consecutive Fridays in a school term, we send these volunteers out to our partner schools. We have 2 of them currently, and in the Chibuli Kabalagala area. One is called Miroa Junior School, and another is called Quentin Junior Schools. So volunteers are sent out to these schools for these 6 consecutive Fridays, from classes, for classes 1 to 7. So these volunteers, not all of them will be professional teachers, like Happy Well Teachers Day. I forgot to start with that. Yes, and this is not to say that we are replacing the teachers, because we cannot do that. A teacher is very sacred, but we work to supplement on what they have. So even more uniquely, we design our own toolkit. It's called the Angaza School Kit, and it focuses on 3 areas: community agency, resourcefulness, and self-awareness.
Lovely. So, Flavia, globally, there's this conversation about machines replacing people, technology replacing people, and I guess it's not bad to start to imagine what are the things that technology can do to reduce this gap between teacher and student population ratios. What are those things that you've seen in the implementation that you think technology would help with?
Okay. Allow me just, take you back. I've had an opportunity to teach for about close to 10 years, and I was privileged to teach in town schools until I got the reality of what's actually on ground in the remote schools. I began to actually question what I originally knew, because I realized that there was a very huge gap in terms of even access to technology. So even before we started the conversation of what gap would it breach, I could already see that, we already had a gap of access. The teachers couldn't, access the technology. They didn't have smartphones, and we're talking about, how technology can actually be able to bridge the gap. And so, first of all, it would be nice for us to think about how we can give the teachers access to the technology, and then the training, because we have seen for schools where there is technology, it first of all interests the learners. In the 21st century, I mean, kids are really fascinated by gadgets. Watching a cartoon on, on a screen, that's something that just gets the learner excited. So if I'm struggling to get the attention of 160 learners, if I do have a projector and I'm projecting something in the classroom, even the child that would have ordinarily not been attentive is definitely going to, I'm going to pick their attention. So it would really go a long way in helping this teacher who is already struggling with many numbers to be able to manage and grab the attention of the learners. If we could have a bit of technology added in there before we can even begin to talk about, hybrid learning where, maybe a learner is going to do some learning at home and do at school, because that, as of now, in the communities that we've served, we've seen that it's still a little, a little far. But we could start by just introducing these gadgets to pick the attention of the learners, and therefore help the teacher to, enhance the whole experience of learning within the environment, and therefore be able to manage the learners better.
Do you think that technology will replace teachers, or that technology will just better enable teachers?
I think it will just enable them to do what they're doing better. It can never replace teachers. I am speaking as a teacher. There's something that we do beyond just teaching. We relate with the learners, and that technology cannot be able to do.
Nurturing
so.
As well.
We nurture them. So I think what technology will do is really just help us elevate what we do and help us be able to do it better, but it can't replace.
Yeah.
Yes.
Gloria, you deal with a very unique community, which is largely an underserved community, largely less privileged, so they don't have the kind of wealth and money at their disposal to buy gadgets and engage in technology.
Okay.
How are you guys helping with bridging that gap?
When you are speaking, I was just, feeling chills, because when you are alluding to technology and, helping to bridge that gap.
Yeah.
So earlier when I was introducing myself, I said I'm the project lead for the Angaza Resource Center.
Yes.
And the Angaza Resource Center is a space that is designed, and it is meant to be a place whereby children in underserved communities can have free access to learning materials. So currently it has a computer laboratory, clap,
Yay!
and a library.
Yeah.
So it has and was a long-held dream of 4040. Okay, that was envisioned by our team leader Esther Scalenzi back in 2017. But you know, these things take some time. They need a lot of resources. But then thankfully, we started construction in March, and July it was done. So it's very new, and we're still implementing and putting up in programs in place for it to start receiving children. But that is really much our goal, for us to be able to bridge that gap and give these children that access that you'll not have otherwise at school or at home. Yes.
All right, thank you so much. We're going to take a very short break, but when we get back, the question that I want us to get into, and particularly for you, is how do we retool teachers to learn these new technology devices and also help with learners and teaching experiences. But first, let's take a very quick break. We get back with Edtech Mondays. Edtech Mondays Uganda is supported by the Mastercard Foundation Center for Innovative Teaching and Learning and the Innovation Village. Welcome back to Edtech Monday, our viewers. We've been talking about teachers. Today is the World Teachers Day, so we're celebrating teachers, but we're talking about how education and technology can work together towards bringing down the teacher-pupil ratios in classrooms. Before we took the break, Flavia, I was going to ask you a question about how do we retool teachers? Many of the teachers who currently are teaching in the curriculum are teachers that graduated a while ago, before these new technology devices hit us. But now it's a new normal. So how do we retool teachers so that they are efficient, but also they're responsive to the needs of learners?
Sure. Yeah, it goes without saying, when I was trained, not so many years ago, about 10 years ago, we saw computers safely guarded in the computer room at the university, and we touch them once in a while. And so I'll tell you, I personally, from personal experience, graduated as a teacher, and I didn't really understand how to use gadgets to enhance my teaching. Like I mentioned earlier, I was fortunate to have been in schools that had that, but I'm speaking from a place where many do not have the opportunity to. As we've worked at Teach for Uganda to train teachers in underserved communities of Mayuge, Namutumba, Kayunga, and Bujiri Buyikwe. I mean, it's sad to see the reality, like I mentioned, of teachers who even fear to use a smartphone. And I appreciate the effort of other non-government organizations and the government to try and retool teachers. But one of the things that we have noticed is missing as we have trained the teachers at Teach for Uganda is many of us really aim at giving them the skill. But I think the first thing we need to do is to begin here, to begin with their mindset. Some are just afraid of the unknown. They're just afraid. And so you come and you have this amazing training of how to use this gadget, but I even fear to touch the gadget. So before we even do anything with our teachers, we start with a general mindset training for them to actually realize that they are learners first and they can literally learn anything. And when we have gone through a phases of them actually discovering that they can still learn even at the level they're at. I've been teaching for 20 years, I've not used a computer, but even now I can actually start. After we have taken them through that, then we begin to introduce them to these gadgets. I think what's really missing is us starting there, because even when we come with very good tailored trainings, and we have not dealt with the fact that I actually can, it becomes very difficult. After we have done that, then we can be able to introduce the trainings. But like I mentioned earlier, you see, ICT is practical. It doesn't make sense for me to learn how to use a tool if I am not going to continuously use it. So we need to couple the trainings with the access. So I train you and I give you what to use, and then you get better at using it while you are trying it. Yes.
How would you also help in that regard? I know many of your volunteers are already digitally literate, but they're working in communities that are not digitally literate. So for you, the problem is actually different, that you're trying to pass on these skills to the younger and underserved populations. How would you do that for those communities?
Okay, so currently we are, like I said earlier, we're in the process of setting up these programs so that we can start receiving these children and start teaching them. So we already have the resource center in place, and like I said, it has a computer laboratory. So we are going to, are in the process of already hiring a teacher to be able to impart these skills. This teacher is already trained. They have education in ICT. Then with time, we will also, call volunteers to be able to, who are already in possession of these skills, to be able to pass on to these children. And also to the teachers as well, the teachers of these schools as well, and also in a bit of a longer time, not so long, but in the future, to the general community as well. Because, and one thing that spurs parents on is when they see for themselves what this place can do. Fine, the child will come and, oh, daddy, mommy, today we played on a laptop, or they taught us this. But when the parent actually experiences for themselves, they get more invested. And speaking of, that brings me to the topic of community. We have, when we speak of community, I think about it in two parts. The community that we serve, i.e. these underserved children, and in particular the area of Chibuli-Kalwagala, where our resource center is located, and then the community that supports us. These are volunteers that give their time and effort to be able to run 40/40 activities, to be able to run activities that will impact and help these children. And then the other part is people who give us money. People give us money, either money and also things in kind. When we are putting up the resource center, like I said, it took a lot of resources, but we were always running fundraising campaigns, to help us. We had like the buy a brick that went to the building and the completion of the resource center, and then helping to stock books as well. We already have some computers in place, but it wouldn't hurt to have some more, or some books. So recently, I undertook the exercise of buying some books for the resource center, and I'd forgotten how expensive textbooks are. On the recommendation of the teachers, because we had meetings with them prior, because we have to involve them in the process. What do you need? How can we get it? How can we support you? So they gave us a list of books and materials that we need, and we bought some, but we need more. So yes, so that is the community that is 40/40.
Yeah, but Flavia, the thing that technology also does for teachers is that, in the community aspect, is that it allows for teachers to form a community with parents who are the third arm of an education. In terms of learning outcomes, what are the differences in learning outcomes for those students that have teachers that have community with their parents and those that don't have?
Well, it goes without saying, and I hope I don't sound like I'm saying this a lot. After experiencing both worlds, I can evidently say that it speaks a lot. In communities where teachers interact with the parents online, you're literally like sharing a report, getting feedback from a parent, and holding the learner accountable. Like you're raising the child together, and so it becomes easy for the child to know that, what, mom is going to get this, dad is going to get this, and my teacher is doing the same, and technology has helped us do this much faster. In the schools that can access that, but in those that cannot, you clearly see a divide. You send a hard copy report, and maybe it doesn't get to the parent. So the parent never actually even knows or hears whether what my child is doing at school. And so it becomes difficult for you as a teacher to literally track and see, is the parent actually involved? Are they interested? Because you don't easily get in touch. So technology definitely helps to enhance the learner outcomes by helping bridge the gap between the teacher, the parent, and the learner. So I think yeah, it would be.
You think it's much better?
It's much
when
better,
when parents are involved. You know, it's not just from an accountability perspective.
Yes.
It's also sometimes continuity.
Yes.
That I've taught this child in class today. This is what I felt. Maybe you can continue the teaching.
You're very right.
Yeah,
You're
the
very
soft
right.
skills in that regard.
You're very right.
Yes. So now, maybe Gloria, I want to start with you. What would be your recommendations around education and technology, and making sure that the two work together to improve outcomes for learners?
Okay. Firstly, one of our models for 4040 is our vision is to be the epicenter for youth engagement and participation. So, and our motto is be the change you want to see, as you very well know.
Yeah.
So, as a young person out there, and you don't have to be young really, but whenever these opportunities come, if you can support in any way, any social cause that will help a child along the way, especially education, health, because these are really the basic building factors, you know, for someone to grow up, you know.
For the time that you've worked in the learning program, if you had to sit down with, say, the Minister for Education and tell them, I think this needs to change, what would that be that you think needs to change immediately?
Okay. One, the obvious answer is provide more resources so that you don't have to have a situation whereby it's not necessarily their job, have to fill the gaps that you've left. All they need to do is, you know, actually pay a visit to the schools, pay a visit to these communities, and see for themselves how much this is needed, you know. Just all of us, I can speak for everyone in this room, who have all been, I think, privileged to have a good education, okay? It's amazing how much difference someone having a book that they have not had to scramble for, or have to like scrimp and save for, or like even have no access to. But that world of information, so at least give it to them, you know? Give it to them, make sure they have the capacity to use it. The other end may not necessarily be 100% your responsibility. As the old adage goes, you might take a horse to the water, but you can but at least do that part. So I would really advise, I would suggest that more resources are availed, and also more support are availed to the people trying to, you know, give these resources to. Yes.
All right. Flavia, what would be your recommendations to the Edtech community from this?
So, one thing comes to mind. Access. Yeah. You know, to add to what she has said, it's going to be difficult for us to preach, you know, Edtech if we do not improve the access to the technology.
Absolutely.
And so we need to find a way of improving access to these gadgets to everybody in the country. Sometimes we have an idea that everybody has around the city, but it's bad in the real community, remote areas. They don't have. So if we can improve access, then I think that would really help us go a long way. And then second, to the teachers. To the teachers, I really speak from my heart. We cannot continue to shun technology. It's here. We have nothing to do about it. Like, we cannot be in today's age without an email address, without a smartphone. How are we going to teach the kids in the 21st century that we are preparing for a world that's almost unknown? So we need to literally embrace technology. We need to make an effort, whether we have gadgets or not. Buy a smartphone, get an email, find a way of, you know, learn how to use WhatsApp, because those are still modes within which we can continue to teach the learners. So to the teachers, anybody can be able to use technology.
There's also a concern that comes mostly from developers, particularly developers of content, that a lot of the content available in the EdTech space is not content that built for young Ugandan audiences, so they can't imagine themselves in the circumstances of the content that's presented to them. So for example, you're describing to people a geography lesson, but you're showing them a map of some far away place that they don't have touch, see and feel. What would you say around like building a curriculum and building content in that curriculum and allowing developers to make content that teachers can use for teaching learners?
I think that would really help us go a long way, because I have actually witnessed that even when you're teaching and you have to use a YouTube video and you're referring to mountains in I do not know where. It's very abstract to a learner because they're trying to now contextualize, we're talking about this and the other. So I think if we could have, as you said it, developers who are now focusing on leaning in and working with the teachers to look at what is it that we are teaching in the curriculum so that we can be able to create content around what's really contextualized for Ugandans, it would go a long way in helping us be able to use those. But I always love to think out of the box. If I'm a teacher and I need to show a video of something, I can be able to walk to that place, video this thing, come and show it to the learners if I am not able to take them to that.
So you're a content creator
like,
too.
you can also find a way of creating your own content and not be limited by, I mean, if it's layers of soil and you want to show, go and grab it, talk about it. I mean, we can. Doesn't have to be, they can. Teachers can.
All right, thank you so much, Flavia. You had some parting shots to give us, Gloria, so now's the turn for your concluding remarks.
Thank you, Raymond. Everything that anyone has ever learned was taught by someone else. Doctors, engineers, you know, all those higher professions that we usually, you know, find that very important, but they're also taught by someone else. What I'm trying to say is that a teacher and the services they provide are very, very important. So I want us to all, if you're being privileged enough to be able to, you know, have a good education, I would like to ask that you be able to, you know, do something to support those who have not been able to have that. Whether it's Teach for Uganda, whether it's 4040 or other organizations working, you know, to provide basic education and support to underprivileged children. I want us to please, you know, be able to do that. And happy World Teachers Day. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Gloria. Thank you so much, Flavia. And thank you so much, our viewers who've been a part of this. We've been talking about the World Teachers Day, but more specifically about the tools that can be built to help teachers and learners achieve the best learning outcomes. So thank you so much for your time. Have yourselves a good day. Edtech Mondays Uganda is supported by the MasterCard Foundation Center for Innovative Teaching and Learning and the Innovation Village.